Good morning. How the devil are you doing this fine day? Hope you're all fit. Well, can you see me? Can you, can you see me in my subtle jersey? Hope you, let me get rid of that thing off the screen, which I completely forgot to do. My apologies. Yeah. So those of you that watch over on Instagram and LinkedIn, you'll know I was at BBC Broadcasting House yesterday. I'll tell you more about it in just a moment. But one of the things that struck me that our national public service broadcaster knows absolutely nothing about our industry. It doesn't know about the dangers and the hazards. It doesn't know about the skills shortage. Doesn't know about the mental health crisis. Now, obviously, I guess that's partly down to the BBC. They do cover so many subjects that they don't have any real depth on any of them, and I understand that. But it's partly down to us in the industry for not shouting loudly enough. If we're going to get our message across to the general public, our best way of doing that surely is by engaging with the press. Otherwise, you're just a man standing in the street shouting at the top of your voice and nobody's taking any notice of you. And one of the things that struck me is while I was in London yesterday, I was at the top end of Regent Street. In another part of London, the streets were lined with farmers' tractors. And regardless of where you sit on the whole inheritance tax debate, they were there protesting in London for the third time over money. Just money. Here in demolition and the construction sector, we can't even be asked to protest about mass suicide. I do have more to say on my trip to Auntie Beeb a little bit later in the show, but let's have a quick look through the chat. Chris Ford, good morning. The devil in me is doing all right. Good to hear. To hear. Dan Cullen says I was wearing the same cap today. Well, I tip my cap to your cap then, Dan. Let's drink to our legs. I'm a Jaws fan. If you know Jaws, you'll know what that was all about. Gary Muirhead was first off the line this morning. I say this morning, it was kind of last night. 1:27 a.m. I'm starting to worry about Gary. I don't think he's getting enough sleep, but he says, "Good morning, Mark. Good morning, gang. Why is it so quiet here? I'm the first of the party." Yeah. I'm a man of a certain age. Parties are long over by the time it gets to 1:27. Peter McKenna, morning, Gary. Big man Dangle this morning. See, morning, Mark, and anyone else. Gary Muirhead back. Morning, Peter. Yeah, that's how's the new job going? Yes, Peter McKenna back in gainful employment, which I'm delighted for. Your sound seems to be coming and going, or is it just me? I'm not doing anything here. Everything seems to be okay here. I'm hoping it's just you. Do need to say good morning to Jim Turner as well. Good morning, Jim. Thank you very much indeed for being here. Loads and loads to get through this morning. Morning, Garvin, over on Most Diggers as well. I'll have a look in the back end and make sure that the sound is coming through okay. It should be absolutely fine. I've done nothing to change it. In actual fact, let me throw up my. Yeah, I'm looking at it now, and everything seems to be going hunky dory. So hopefully, it will be at your end. Not that that's a good thing, but you know. Sound is drifting up and down. How very strange. I'm broadcasting on all cylinders at the moment, so I don't know what that is. If it gets too bad, let me know, and I'll I'll do what I can. 1:27 a.m. P time. The downside of old age. Oh, tell me about it. Yes, and sound is drifting in and out. I do apologise for that. And yes, we can't be asked to stand together on rates and mental health awareness and everything else. We'll come to all of that in just a moment. First, let me roll the intro, get the show on the road, and I'll post the question of the day at the same time. Yeah, no idea what's going on with the sound because Galvin's got the same thing over on Instagram. He's just said it's dipping slightly up and down, but keep going though. Not so bad. Good. I will do precisely that. It is Tuesday, the 11th of February. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the walrus of demolition. Quite possibly the industry's mouthpiece as well. We'll come to that in just a moment. In today's show, Demolition News on TV. Yes, that's a thing that happened. Develon gets down and dirty. We're celebrating the humble rough terrain forklift with Case, and Bauma is still 2 months away, but the construction of one of the show's biggest stands is well underway. Plus, today's morning monologue has precisely nothing whatsoever to do with demolition or construction. It's entirely personal, so please feel free to duck out before we get to that. And Jim has just very kindly said, sound didn't falter on the clip. It must be your mic. There's not a great deal I can do about it right now. What I'll do, I'll reboot it all when I come off air. Chris Ford says our sound is coming and going here as well. I can only apologise. I'll come back to the question of the day because Ken Hatch has already answered it, but I'll come back to that in just a moment. But before we get to all of that stuff and nonsense, we do have the small matter of today's mystery machine. And I've been out with a paintbrush again, so you'll have to pay very, very close attention. Yeah, I'm going to go back to the chat before I show you the mystery machine. Dan Cullen says it cheeses me off, as I think the reason no one wants to stand is because we are self-employed and yet replaceable. I think that's part of it from a workforce point of view, but I also wonder about the imbalance of power within the industry. You know, why would the company directors that supposedly run the industry and who have their associations with trade federations and trade associations and stuff, why would they bleat when they are still raking in a fortune? They're not really suffering from the whole mental health thing. They're not suffering from the suicide. They're not witnessing the hazards and the dangers on a daily basis. So, yeah, I think you're right. But, yeah, we'll come back to all that in just a moment. Anyway, mystery machine. Looks like that. You can't actually see the colour yet, but I have changed the colour to protect the innocent. So if you've got any guesses on what that might be, I'd love to hear from you. Going back to our question of the day, I'm going to remind you of it, and then I'll actually show you a few. Let me take that off the screen very quickly. Yeah, our question of the day, I say ours, it actually comes from my wife, so it's hers, and it is this. Do you have a bedtime drink? Now, personally, I don't think you can beat a late-night cup of tea, although I am quite partial to the occasional Horlicks or Ovaltine if I want a really decent night's sleep. But what about you? Are you a milky drink person, or do you head off, before you head off to the land or not? Are you taking something a wee bit stronger? What have we got? Chris Ford says, used to be coffee or hot chocolate. Being of a certain age, I try not to drink late at night. Otherwise, I'm up and down all night. I am still up and down all night, but I continue to drink, but mainly tea. Ken Hatcher says, normally the worst thing at night for coffee for bed. Yeah, don't be doing that. Don't be doing that. And cheese. Don't be doing coffee and cheese or chocolate. In fact, don't do anything before bed. Ken Hatcher says, they don't care one bit. Yeah. I'm inclined to agree. Gary says he used to love Horlicks, but now don't try not to drink anything before bed, or I'll be up and down all night. It's going out for a drink. Once you break the seal, you'll be up all night. Yeah. And what is that? What is it about? And I don't know if this is a peculiarly male thing, but I do believe it is. Back when I was a drinker, you could drink 4, 5, maybe 6 pints of lager or 6 pints of something. At which point your body would go, you probably need a pee now. And you'd go for a pee. Now, bearing in mind, your body had the capacity to hold 6 pints of lager. You had a pee and then literally go back to the bar, have one sip, and you needed another pee. What's that about? If anyone's got a scientific explanation for that, I'd love to hear from you. Not that I want to be talking about pee all day, but listen, we're all friends together here. Going back to Mystery Machine, Dan Cullen, who is currently in the lead and is our 3-time champion leading into today. He reckons it could be a Komatsu WA 100M-7. It's not. He also reckons it could be a Komatsu WA 70M. It is not. I'll tell you now, not a Komatsu of any description. Let me show you a smidge more. There you are. There's the colour that's not right. And that's the colour that I've played around with. If you can figure out what colour that's supposed to be, please let us know. We're looking for a make and a model, as we always do. We're coming back with me in a minute after this. So yeah, listen. I'll come back to the reason I'm playing this in just a moment after the film. I was on telly yesterday. Me and Angela Rayner, because we're like that. We're so like that they filmed us at completely different times in different places. So, but I was on the telly, and I'm going to play it for you because it does give me a lead into something else I want to talk about. So here we go.
The Deputy PM spoke to the BBC yesterday, defending her decision.
Yeah, she spoke to the BBC saying that the decision to bring down Grenfell Tower was taken on the decision of experts. She said the structure of the tower since the fire had become dangerous and would worsen over time. And she said that she knew full well that whatever she said at the meeting with the residents and with the Grenfell community was going to be very traumatic for people, and that people would be upset, but that this was the only way forward.
I knew when I took on this role that this was something that was going to be really difficult, but a really important piece of work that had to be done, and therefore making the decision was something that I spoke to the Grenfell community, including bereaved and survivors. There isn't a consensus. I don't think you ever will find that. It's devastating what happened, but what I want to try and do is work with the Grenfell community, the bereaved survivors, to make sure that we do justice to the fact that there is a sacred place, people lost their lives there, and make sure that there is a lasting memorial on that site.
The Deputy PM, Angela Rayner, speaking to Laura Koonsberg there. Clearly a deeply difficult and sensitive situation, as we've heard. And how will that be considered from a practical point of view when it is taken down?
It's a good question, because it is a completely unique situation. Never in British history have we had a tragedy of this magnitude resulting in so many deaths, and where a decision has had to be taken to take down a 24-storey building that's right at the heart of a community. And it has to be done with the utmost sensibility, which is what Mark Antony from Demolition News told me.
We'll be asking workers to go in to work where people have died. That's undoubtedly going to have some sort of impact upon them. They're not going to leave that behind at 5 o'clock in the evening when they go home. They'll be taking that home to their families. So I think that's a key consideration. But obviously, I mean, the biggest concern is for the local community and for the bereaved families. The mental health impact on them. You know, they're gradually going to see that tower disappearing. And one day they will open their curtains and it will be gone. You know, that's going to be so jarring for them.
Mark Antony there, and there are more meetings with bereaved families and survivors planned. Thank you, Anna.
I'm going to address this question very quickly from Gary Muirhead. First of all, has there been a contractor appointed yet? Not as far as I'm aware. I mean, bearing in mind the decision was only made on Friday of last week, officially. We picked it up a few days before that, but it was officially announced on Friday of last week. So I would imagine there's going to be a consultation period before that, but we will be keeping you abreast of that. I'll come back to the question of the day, but I do love a bit of predictive text. Dan Cullen going for the Myanmar, capital of Burma, or is it Burma? It may actually be Burma. The VAT. He then decided that corrective text had screwed him over, and he said the Myanmar VAT. It's not a V100. It's not a V120. It's not a V70. It's not a Myanmar at all, and it's also not a New Holland. Yeah, not a New Holland. Gary, just on the tail end of his question there, who's brave enough? Commercial imperative will drive somebody to accept the contract, no question about it. That is the nature of the beast. I hope they choose not based on pure cost, but on sensitivity and capability and competence and everything else. And I do also wonder, yeah, I mean, personally, if it were me, I would be choosing the DE groups to take the building down. They were involved. I mean, they were in the building hours after the fire was put out, working alongside the firefighters to ensure that the building was structurally sound enough to go in there and work. So I think if there were any justice in the world, they'd probably get the nod, but I don't suppose it'll come down to that. It's more likely to come down to cost, which is a bit of an insult, if you ask me. Sticking with the mystery machine, Chris Ford is going for a Bobcat L28. It's not Kubota R90 from Dan Cullen. It's neither of those things. I'm going to take that away for a second. I do want to bring this one up. Our question of the day today, do you have a bedtime drink? Jim Turner does not mess about. He really doesn't. Spiced rum with a spoon of honey mixed in, or a cup of tea with plenty of Baileys in it. And see, now I've had coffee with Baileys in it, but tea with Baileys? Is that a thing? Have I missed a thing? Should I be trying that? I've got a funny feeling I should. I did, just to let you know, it's game over on the Mystery Machine. And we have, not for the first time this month, actually for the second time this month, we have, well, the same person winning. Let me take that when I can find it. Yeah, let me take that away, and I'll show you the correct answer, which comes from Mr. Ford, who says case 21F, and he's absolutely bloody right. Let me show you to you. Let me put it on the screen first. There you are. As I say, the colour was there to fool you, but that's what it's supposed to look like. That's how I made it. That's how it's supposed to look. Chris Ford, 3 points, sir. Well done. That puts you in second place. Second place. Congratulations, Chris. Top work, my friend. Well done indeed. Just going back to the BBC interview. So that soundbite was all that remained of about a 20-minute interview. I do understand that TV time is tight, and they needed a piece to emphasise the point. So just a shame that some of the things that I said, which I thought were more insightful, ended up on the cutting room floor, never to see the light of day. But since the news broke about Grenfell Tower being demolished, I've done 3 newspaper interviews, 4 radio interviews, and now a spot on TV. And when the Times covered the story, they spoke to former president, or IDE president, John Woodward, but only on my recommendation. Now, I'm not saying any of this to boast. Don't get me wrong. I love being on the radio, on the telly, and in the newspapers, although I do wish it every once in a while it would be for something more upbeat. But late last night, I received a WhatsApp message, and the person that sent it to me is watching, and he was asking why I, a mere journalist, quite rightly, was doing this stuff when the industry's trade body was conspicuous by its absence. There are only 2 possible explanations. The first explanation is that they are now so small and so irrelevant to everyone but their officers and members that they've become invisible to the wider world. And I do think there's a degree of that. The second reason, I think, is they're just too cowardly, too concerned with causing controversy and saying something out of turn. But whatever the reason, they're surely failing in their duty as the industry's self-appointed mouthpiece. They call themselves the voice of demolition. Surely at this point, they've now surrendered that crown. Love to get your thoughts, and our friend Mick has just arrived. Good morning, Mick. How are you doing, my friend? Hope you're fitting well. Dan says Angela hasn't got a clue about this industry at all. She's absolutely clueless. I'm planning to write a thing for tomorrow because I don't get out much, as you probably gathered. Gary Muirhead off air actually asked, how do I fit in the show when I'm doing all this other stuff? I don't get out much. But one thing that is patently clear when I do get out and about, when I'm not mixing in demolition and construction circles, I'm not at an exhibition, not at a conference, but I'm I'm in a restaurant, or I'm out with friends, or I'm in a TV studio, that nobody knows nor cares one iota about what happens in this industry. And I do think it's high time we started to realise that, because once we realise that, we'll realise that we are actually, if anyone's going to fix our problems, it won't be from outside, it will be from within. I'm going to write that today if I get the chance. Dan Cullen says, because the CITB, etc., just don't care, rather fill their pockets than talk about the situation we're having in construction and demolition industry. People should stand up. I agree. But I agree that people should stand up, but I'm of a mind that it wouldn't matter if we stood up, because I don't think anyone is taking a blind bit of notice of us. I'll write that for tomorrow. I'll try to write that for tomorrow, and we'll actually have a proper morning monologue tomorrow, if I can get it straight in my head. Back after this with something of well, it's not a blast from the past, because it's still a current machine, but it's kind of fallen out of fashion, but I still like it. So back after this.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/DemolitionNews.
It's a good question. Did the BBC supply lunch, or did you experience the famous BBC canteen? I have to admit, I've not been to broadcasting, or the new broadcasting house before. Been to the old one several times in the past. The new one is almost as secure as an airport now. When you arrive, there's kind of a I can't even think of the word for it, but there's kind of a roundabout, and you could drive in one way and out the other way. All of that is cordoned off. There's bollards and fencing, so you can't, nobody can storm the building, as it were. So there's that. You then get in and you go through a security check. You then go in beyond the reception and you go through another security check. There was no lunch. In actual fact, I went into one of these Itsu places. I don't know if anyone is familiar with Itsu. It's a Japanese, excuse me. And I had one of their noodle bowls, udon noodles with gyozas, loads of veg. I was feeling a bit vegless yesterday. Body was on a bit of a go slow for reasons that will become clear at the end of the show, but was feeling a bit slow. So I went and I had lots and lots of veg and health-giving broth and stuff. So no, I didn't experience the BBC canteen. Let's have a look. Dan Cullen says, all we are to them, all monkeys and a bank statement. Yeah, absolutely. Knock and group now, not CITB. For us, I don't know what that means. It is quite nice. Love it. Not sure what that is either, but we'll come back to that. Anyway, I promised you a bit of an old school, but current school. Back when I first started in this industry, there was a machine that was kind of ubiquitous. It was everywhere. Certainly back from my SED days, there was plenty of these about. And the machine I'm talking about is an RTFL, better known as a rough terrain forklift, like this. I kind of like the fact that it's been largely unaffected by the passage of time. I know it's got a cab now, and not all of them used to, but it kind of looks like it used to. Yeah. Gary Muirhead says, remember seeing lots of JCB RTFs on site years ago before the telehandler took over? Yeah, it has fallen out of fashion. But, in the right application, as Dan Cullen says, nice little loader. Hot, he says. He also explained... He says, he said it was quite nice, love it, didn't know what that was about, but he then came back and said, I like Itsu. Sorry, Ken, Itsu. You should sponsor this show. You have at least 2 fans in our midst. And Ken Hatterick is clarifying what he said. Knock and Group has taken over from CITB for plant operators, etc. Have they? I've got to be honest. I haven't got my finger on that particular pulse at the moment, but I'll go and check that out. Jim says, MPs in general nowadays have no clue about the real world and how it works. The current front bench has never run a company, and now they've been let loose at running our country. And then he slips into, was he Private Fraser on Dad's Army? Doomed. We're all doomed, I tell you. Yes, I think we probably are. Manitou used to be most RTFs. Yeah, Manitou rough, and I think they may still be in their product range. Can't remember. Now, here's a question. Roof glass viewing for... roof glass for viewing the dipper armor machines. Why are they so small? I don't know the answer to that. And our friend Mick, I don't think I've said good morning to Mick, but so good morning, Mick. Government says it recognises construction is vital to growth and is putting in 140 million for 5,000 apprentices a year. A fellow called Dave Quinton gave an interview and is really pushing a button on this. I don't know who Dave Quinton is, but good luck to him. I think he is farting against Sunday, if I'm being completely honest, but that's a whole other story. Mick, now you're here. Question of the day is this. Do you have a bedtime drink? Let us know in the chat. Let me have a look. Oh, yeah, we're going to Develon in just a second. Back after
Since
this.
the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
Yeah, I've got 5 minutes of Develon coming up. I won't bore you with an intro. I'll just play the film.
The biggest motivator for me doing any sort of dirt work or outdoor work in general is just the overall satisfaction I get from transforming a customer's property to something that could be messy or dirty into something that looks clean, looks nice, and that's really what they are after, fulfilling their dreams. I am the owner of Wood Duck Landscapes and Blue Grade Earthworks, Inc. Wood Duck Landscapes is a full-service outdoor landscape contractor where we can do any sort of grading, seeding, irrigation, hardscape, or softscape work. So essentially how it started for me in this industry is my grandfather opened up a tree and plant nursery back in the early 2000s. I grew up helping him throughout the summers, and any school breaks that I had, I'd always come up and help Gramps on the farm. So that kind of just naturally developed as I got older into more of a career, and me looking at, hey, what am I really good at and what do I want to be doing full-time every day? And so the landscapes side is basically the extension of that. After I graduated high school in 2019, decided to pursue going for a college degree. So I went to Iowa State for a year for entrepreneurship, and I decided that it just didn't really fit me well, and that simultaneously was working with my dad in the family business, Wood Duck Landscapes. And so I decided to just drop college and move full-time with the business venture, and I haven't looked back. Generally, on our projects, we are in very compact spaces, but we need to be able to do a lot of work or move very heavy objects. So to have the most power to weight ratio is vital for us so that we can perform the work that we need to do. The reduced tail swing is pretty much vital for our operation because in a lot of scenarios we're working between an 8 and a 10-foot wide path along a body of water. We just don't have room for 3 to 4 feet of tail swing over the tracks, and so the reduced swing has really fit our needs well. The DX62, when I was looking to purchase a machine, I was looking for a compact machine that's very stout, very strong, and yet easy and reliable to service. Some overall features that I like of the machine: it's quick, it's sturdy or planted to the ground, and it's got a lot of power, a lot more power than a lot of competitor machines I've ran. The visibility overall, I would say, is really good. You can see to basically every corner of the machine and everywhere around you. Comfort-wise, it's really good. One noteworthy thing about the cab is it has a fantastic air conditioning system, which is something I always complain about with other machines. And so to have that great AC, a comfortable seat, plenty of leg room, it just really makes those longer days operating just that much more comfortable. What kind of inspired me initially is I saw on social media a man named Matt who owns Advanced Wall Structures in Minnesota, and they do a lot of boulder wall retaining work. We were kind of faced with the same situation, and so I kind of was looking at what he was doing. I was looking at what some other guys in the industry were doing as far as managing natural stones, and the best solution for us was to find a really strong rotating grapple that doesn't have a lot of frills and a lot of extras, but just is strong, reliable, and dependable. Previously, we used a bucket and thumb like most other contractors do. The biggest challenge for us in doing that is that we don't have a lot of space to move the machine to get just the right angle we need. So having that rotation function allows us to stay in place, grab and place, and there's not wasted time in between setting one boulder to another boulder. The biggest thing for me that has set RTL apart is the fact that they really listen and care about their customers' needs and requests versus some of our competitor dealers that we've worked with. it doesn't make a big impact if you try to get something done with them versus RTL. You ask and it gets done, and that's exactly what we need for a vendor partner. RTL's made sure that we're very taken care of. Any issues we have, they're quick to solve them, and they provide a really great service to us as contractors. Word of mouth is by far the biggest thing that will get us new leads and also maintains our reputation. So we're very, very adamant on maintaining a very high reputation in this community and being known as the contractors that do the best work, that do everything right. What we focus on is being innovative and always have the next level of equipment that allows us to keep up with that trend of going bigger in certain scenarios or going smaller in other scenarios.
Loads going on in the chat. Just enjoyed the film, but loads going on in the chat. Dan Cullum's asking about why the roof glass in cabs is so very small. And he then says, you have to bend forward to look up and you get a sore neck. I talking to the lady at the BBC yesterday, Anna O'Neill, who was very nice, by the way. Talking to her yesterday, she reckons that she's been down at Grenfell a lot, and she has met a woman who now has effectively a hump on her back because she has spent the last 8 years looking at the ground rather than looking at her surroundings because she's so close to what was Grenfell Tower. I can't verify that. I haven't seen it firsthand, but imagine that. Going back to our question of the day, which was, do you have a bedtime drink? Dan Cullen says, I used to have like a hot toddy with honey. Now just water. Good man. And for a hot toddy, he's explaining, Irish or Scotch whiskey, hot and honey. There was a day. Chris Ford, the RTFLs have come a long way since the Sambron, Sanderson, Manitou of the 70s. They certainly have. Mick is also, he likes a wee dram as well. Got to admit, I have a little tot of the Kilbeggan with me before bed. Yeah, nice. Dan also asked, like the darker glass, I wonder why hirers here don't do it. Because the sun never shines in this country. Why would you have dark glass when the sun comes out one day of the year? It's a good point, though. And he does like the sexy-looking skid steer as well. What do we got? Chris Ford. Can remember a liner RTFL based on a dumper, solid chassis with a Lister Petter engine. At least it had a wire cage to protect you. I actually went and reported on one of those. Now, that would have been late 80s, so I don't know if it was a rebirth of the old liner brand, but I do remember seeing it. Chris Ford said, it's a Bobcat in a different colour. It is. If I was in the market, I would look at Develon. I'm sure they'd be delighted to hear that. I think they'd be even more delighted if we were actually in the market and looking at them. But yeah, we've got a bit of light relief in just a moment from JCB, so stick around. You might remember, maybe 6 months ago, we told you that JCB was throwing its fair old heft and its engineering expertise into the monster truck market, which seemed bizarre. But having seen it, I can see why they've done it. I'm not a petrol head. I'm not a monster truck fan. But JCB, if you're watching, and this is going to be anywhere near me, I'd like to go and see it. Look at this.
Hey guys, Brandon Arthur here, driver of JCB Digatron. We're out here in Stockholm, Sweden. We're about to go out there and dig it up tonight.
Does anyone know how monster trucking works? Are they like competing against the clock? Do they get points for artistic value. I genuinely have no idea. I understand as much about monster trucks as I understand about rugby, and I know nothing about rugby. Dan Cullen says, yeah, so cool. Yeah, I agree. And as I say, I am not the target audience for that, but yeah, absolutely fantastic. We've got one more film for you, which is Bauma related, which means we get to play this.
We do, I doubt it. We've got the energy, we'll tell you all about it.
Now, Bauma is officially 8 weeks away, so it's 2 months away. The film I'm about to play you was actually uploaded 2 months ago, so this is 4 months in advance. But as you're about to see, preparations for Bauma have been in train for an awful long time.
The preparations for a Bauma typically begin 1.5 years before the trade fair starts. We are currently in week 2 of setup here on site. The structure for 2 of our halls is already in place. The tent flooring is being installed, and additional foundations will soon be concreted. I'm Franz Honerter, and I'm DOCA's project manager for Bauma 2025. Our guests can look forward to an exhibition covering over 5,300 square meters. Numerous innovations around formwork, scaffolding, and digital solutions await you, along with construction automation, sensor technology, and robotics. No doubt, a project of this scale comes with unique challenges. But as always, we stand by our promise. We make it work. Visit us from April the 7th to 13th in Munich. We look forward to seeing you there.
I was going to say this, but I'll let Dan say it. 1.5 years. Wow. Why don't they just keep the structures there for the next show? Because the Messe München, which is obviously the venue that hosts the Bauma, it hosts other exhibitions as well. It's not just dedicated to Bauma. So same as all exhibitions, it goes up, it goes down, and then 3 years later, we do it all again. But absolutely astonishing. Going back to the Digatron from JCB, I think it's either racing or freestyle tricks. Well, you live and learn. I had to say, I know nothing, but I'd quite happily go along just for the spectacle. So JCB, I'd like to go and have a look at that. A morning monologue is just it's different today. Back after this. Yeah, I make no apologies for the fact that today's morning monologue has got precisely nothing whatsoever to do with our usual topics of conversation. But I'd like to think we're all friends here, and this is the kind of thing that friends share. So, yeah. My father-in-law passed away yesterday. We heard about it just before yesterday's show, but I kept it to myself because not all of his family and friends had been informed at that point. At the time of his passing, he was 84 years old. Quite how he managed to live so long with such good humour is nothing short of miraculous. He spent months in hospital when my wife was just a little girl because he'd contracted tuberculosis. He lost a kidney then, and the other one began to slowly wither and die. He suffered 2 heart attacks and bounced back from both. This time last year, he was in hospital again for almost a month with a severe chest infection. But he shook that off too. So when he was admitted to hospital again about 3 weeks ago, everyone expected him to do what he always did, to pull through. We saw him on Friday and he was in good spirits. It really did feel like he'd turned a corner. But on Saturday, just 24 hours later, we were told there was nothing more that could be done. And on Monday morning, in an instant, he was gone. I met Phil. Well, his name was Philip, but everyone called him Phil. I met Phil when I was just 19 years old. He told my then girlfriend and now wife that I had a good firm handshake. Somewhere along the line, I realised that he only wanted the best for his precious daughter, and I think he realised I wanted the same thing. So we bonded. We played golf together every Sunday morning, come rain or shine. We even played in the snow once, and we were both terrible. Truth be told, the golf was just an excuse to enjoy a full English breakfast at the clubhouse. However, He was and is the only person I've ever seen achieve a hole-in-one in person, and it was entirely by accident. We were playing a par 3 hole and he sliced his tee shot. We were playing a par 3 hole and he sliced his tee shot off to the right and up a hill. The ball plopped down, thought about it for a second, and then began to trickle down the slope, gathering pace as it did so. It then rolled across the green and dropped neatly into the hole. There was 2 men teeing off at the top of the hill, and they performed what is probably the world's smallest Mexican wave in celebration. As we walked to the next hole, I told him the tradition dictated that he should buy everyone in the clubhouse a drink. He said, "Sod that," and we skipped breakfast that day. During his father of the bride speech at our wedding, just a few years later, he asked if I knew just how many children my new bride wanted. I laughed, fairly certain he was joking. 3 years later, I was father to 4 children, including a set of twins. Due to his poor health, he was forced to take early retirement when my children were still in primary school. As a result, he probably did more school runs with my kids than I ever managed. And he was a constant presence in their life right up until the day he died. And they idolized him, and they still do. In many ways, he was an ordinary man living an ordinary life. Wife, 2 kids, ordinary house, ordinary car. But there was so much more to him than that. He had more facets than a cut diamond, which is kind of what he was. He was an avid reader, football fan, and a music fan with an encyclopedic knowledge of the Beatles. He was a collector and an amateur historian. He was as good at art as he was bad at golf. And perhaps his greatest singular achievement, he was a superb father, grandfather, and great-grandfather. About a year ago, when his remaining kidney was finally giving up the ghost, he was placed on dialysis. Every Tuesday and Saturday afternoon, I'd pick him up and deliver him home. And that 20-minute car journey back to his house was never once a father-in-law, son-in-law conversation. It was just 2 blokes talking rubbish, generally about football. And I'm really going to miss those chats. Phil's passing, obviously, has hit his wife and his 2 daughters hard. It's hit his 7 grandchildren equally hard. It's entirely understandable. But I barely slept last night thinking about him. Yes, he was just my father-in-law, my wife's dad. But he was someone I'd known for more than 40 years, someone I looked up to, someone I spent a huge amount of time with. But that's not it. The reason I'm feeling the loss so acutely is because Phil gave me the greatest gift I've ever received. He entrusted me with his youngest daughter. And that daughter gave me the 4 other greatest gifts of my life, my children. And for that, I shall be forever grateful. I'm glad his suffering has come to an end, but I'm so sad he's no longer here. So Phil, you rest now, and don't worry about your daughter. I'll take it from here. Yeah. Gary, sorry to hear that sad news, my friend. Please give Ruth and family our deepest condolences. I certainly will, Gary. I don't know if she's. I don't know if she's here. I think she may be going over to my daughter's. My mother-in-law is actually living with my daughter at the moment, so I'm not sure if she's still here. But I will certainly pass over. Sorry for your loss. Deepest condolences, respect to you and your family, Mark. Thank you for that, Dan. Sorry for your loss. I've heard that one. Mick says to you and yours and all who knew him, I pass on my regards, mate. Thank you very much indeed. May his soul rest in peace. Yeah, I'm going to be honest. He was in a lot of pain at the end. Very, very heavily sedated. And even though he was sedated, he was still in a lot of pain. So, I think we all take a slight degree of comfort in the fact that he's not actually in pain any longer. But I think we say it about everybody when they pass, but he is going to leave an absolutely huge hole in our life. And bizarrely, he was quite a quiet bloke. Bearing in mind, we are here in this house. We were before my kids left. We were a family of 6, so 4 children, very loud, shouty, and everything else. And he'd quite happily sit amongst them, just with his nose in his Kindle or reading a book, but just glad to be around. And even literally down to the last few weeks, despite the fact that he was ill, he was struggling to get around and that kind of thing. An opportunity to go and spend some time with his great-grandchildren. he sees it. Just it feels like a naff thing to say, but I think this is probably the highest compliment I can play him. He was a family man, just wanted to be with family all the time. Chris Ford, condolences to you and your family. Thank you very much indeed, Chris. Heartfelt condolences to Ruth and her family. Thank you again. Beautifully written. It's kind of my thing. I've got to admit, I hate doing them, but I've done a few of those recently, and condolences to you and Ruth and family. God bless him. Yeah, God bless him indeed. Listen, not a believer, but I'd like to think he is in a more comfortable place right now. So I'm not gonna hang around today. We'll pick this up again tomorrow, but I'm going to love you and leave you, everybody. I'll be back at 10 o'clock tomorrow with yet more of the same. Hopefully, I'm a little more upbeat for the morning monologue, although given the subject matter that I've got kicking around in my head, it probably won't be that upbeat, but I will do my level best. So everybody, please go and have a good day. Mark Whiting says, nicely said, Mark. Condolences to you. Thank you very much indeed, Mark. I'm going to steal from Dan Cullen a little bit here. This is something that he says on a fairly regular basis, often on a Friday, I find, but I'm going to say this to you one last time. He always says, give your family a hug, tell them that you love them. He never says this bit, but I'm going to say it to you now. You never know when the last time you'll get to do that will be. As I said, I mean, I was fortunate enough with Phil. I went to see him without my wife. My wife was at work, so I went up to see him while he was in hospital. And we had a good old chat, and I did actually get to have the conversation about, thanking him for basically handing over his daughter, his youngest daughter as well, which, as a father of daughters, I know how hard that is likely to be. So we had that conversation. I thought we were due for many, many more, and we never got to have them. So if you've got not just parents, in-laws, brothers, sisters, nieces, nephews, anything, just take a moment today and give them a bell and tell them you love them, because, as I say, you might not get a chance to do it again. Till tomorrow, everybody, have a good day. See you soon.